is just brilliant. Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack, and today I'm going to be comparing my £900 S Class shed to this very nice £30,000 Maserati Quattroporte. German cars have long had a reputation as the best in the world, especially these big sort of Merc BMW saloons. But is it really possible that an S Class, which is 10 years older and £29,100 cheaper than the Maserati, can it really be possible that it is a better car? One area where the Maserati takes an early win very clearly is in curb appeal. It looks a million times better than that Mercedes. Only the Italians seem to be able to come up with these designs, but it's so much more appealing, so much more interesting, so different to anything else out there. It looks amazing. Especially this GTS versions with the special wheels and all the other little touches. It looks great. Surprisingly, the interior, and this may shock you, is actually also a nicer place to be than the Merc. It's got some really nice materials, again being the GTS version. It's got some nice Alcantara, it's got some carbon fibre. The materials are quite nice, the plastics are nice soft touch, they feel solid. It looks nice. The Merc, on the other hand, is just a drab sea of grey plastic, and unbelievably for Mercedes, not just is it horrible looking, but it's not good quality plastic. A lot of it feels flimsy, it's not nice to the touch, it's not particularly well built, and all that is a bit of a shocker. But you will understand, maybe, if you know about W220s, this age of Mercedes-Benz is when Mercedes went to the dark side and decided that they were going to try and make more money for each car by reducing costs. It's something that they thankfully then turned around, but for a while the quality of these cars, and particularly they had rust issues, all sorts of other things, the quality really wasn't great. But ultimately it's going to come down to how they drive, so let's take them out for a quick spin. There's something about these big Mercs, even one like this. At the moment the suspension was on hardest, that's why it was jiggling a bit. There we go. Magic carpet ride. Immediately just a feeling of quality, which is just, I know this is supposed to be one of Merc's worst S Classes, and maybe it is in terms of how they were built, but certainly they do go really well. That engine, that 5-litre V8 is just butter smooth. That is just lovely. You felt it pulling away there. It is just, in a sports car, maybe it wouldn't be brilliant, but in a car like this, it's ideally suited. Bags and bags of torque, incredibly smooth. The steering actually surprised me because, yes, it's not the most brimming with feel as you'd expect, but it does have feel. It has enough feel, and I think it's perfectly geared for a car like this. It's pretty slow, but it works really well. Everything about this is, for me anyway, I don't normally have luxury cars, it is amazing. The ride is incredibly good. You can stiffen it up slightly, and actually I prefer the middle setting. There's 3 settings, soft, medium and the hardest. And in the medium setting, actually for me, it's the best. It rides in the best way, and also it doesn't pitch too much into corners. It's absolutely lovely and quiet. It glides over surfaces. It's so refined. It's a really lovely thing. The gearbox is just, it's one of these old-fashioned slush boxes, and it suits it absolutely perfectly. It's almost imperceptible the way it changes gear. Now, if you do drive it a bit harder, the gearbox does get in the way. It doesn't always change down when you want it to, but really, you don't particularly want to be driving this car that hard anyway. It's very, very accomplished at what it does. It does that incredibly well. Now, the interior maybe isn't as nice as some of the older Mercedes interiors, not quite as solid, but it's still, it feels much roomier than the Maserati, and it is still a very pleasant place to be. Now, not that you'd want to drive it particularly fast, but if you were late for your executive meeting or the theatre or whatever else, there's plenty of pace there, and actually you can really hustle it through corners. It behaves really well for such a big car and such a heavy car. I think it's 1900 kilos, although that is still a good few hundred kilos lighter than the previous generation, because this is all alloy. You can actually chuck it around and it doesn't turn into a complete mess. It actually works pretty well. Yes, there's a little bit of lean, but the steering on the firmer settings sort of firms up and becomes more direct. Not because anything I think is happening with the steering, but just because the car pitches and rolls less, it just becomes more direct. And you can make some real speed. There's no hiding the bulk though. You can feel how heavy it is when you're doing that. But as I said, luxury car, so really a bit pointless to be looking at that. I will be interested to see what the Maserati does. I'm sure it's going to be more exciting than this, but I think this is a brilliant car. It is actually, weirdly, for a person like me who likes classics cars and sports cars, it's one of my sort of favourite cars that I've found so far, also because it was so cheap and I wasn't expecting much from it. I've just sort of been pretty blown away by how good it is. So let's bring on the Maserati. Seats are really quite comfortable. It's now just in standard mode. The gearbox is very smooth. It has the ZX 7-speed, I think. Unlike some of the earlier Quattroportes that had basically the old F1 Ferrari system. I don't know what Maserati called it. One thing I'm picking up already is the steering really is, it's quite nervous. It's not very relaxing. The ride is okay, I would say, but it's not brilliant. For a luxury car, I would just say it's just about well, is it acceptable? It's really fidgety at lower speeds, and it just, I don't know, it's no, it's not great. It really isn't great. It's better when you're going a bit quicker, but it's not fab. It does turn in really keenly. We'll try giving it a bit more speed in a minute and see if it wakes the car up, which I suspect it will. But so far, on the luxury side of things, the gearbox is great. The engine is maybe lacking still a bit of low down torque. I know this is the larger engine and it's a lot better than the earlier ones, but it's still not the right lump for this kind of car. And I think you can tell that originally it was designed as a Ferrari unit. I know that Maserati got hold of it first, but it was designed by Ferrari for Ferraris up and foremost, and it's sort of been adapted for these Mazas after. This has a lot of nice sort of materials. It has the carbon fibre, it's got some Alcantara, it's got leather. In terms of materials for the interior, it's certainly nicer than the Bismarck, than my Merc. But I don't know, the way it's set out, the lack of room, the way it feels, the way it rides, I think really it's not. And the fact that the engine is sort of quite revvy and quite lacking low down, it's a really, I know this is my mate's car, but sorry James, this is a terrible luxury car. It really is. If it gets bumpy as well, I mean, the ride is terrible. It really is. At town speeds, it is not good. What an odd car. Now this is the GTS version of the Quattroporte. I think they only made them in the last 3 years. They're quite rare, and it's supposed to be the choice version in many ways because it doesn't have the skyhook or whatever suspension the Maserati suspension is. It's got normal dampers, which apparently are a real improvement. It has a bit more power, but crucially it has the special exhaust, and that exhaust does this. So it may be an absolutely terrible luxury car, and it is, but it's actually a really good sports car. It shouldn't be able to do this. This is just brilliant. If you're revving it through, the engine has plenty of pace, and it sounds amazing. What an amazing car. And what a terrible car. I mean, this is just the most schizophrenic car I have ever been in. What an unbelievable, bizarre thing. So, as a luxury car, it's absolutely terrible. I mean, awful. The ride is terrible, the engine doesn't have enough torque, it's not relaxing, the interior doesn't feel spacious enough, it's just rubbish. But put it into sport and it absolutely comes alive. And it's astounding how good it is. It does things that a big car like this should not be able to do. It's so playful. The steering comes alive. You chuck it around it's just brilliant. It's an astounding car. And yet, as a luxury car, absolutely awful. So, can my £900 Mercedes S Class from 2002 beat this 2010, I think it is, Maserati Quattroporte GTS? And the answer is a resounding absolutely it can. It's a billion times better. It is miles better. It is luxurious, it's comfortable. Okay, the interior materials aren't that great, but as a car, it is head and shoulders above this Maserati. Of course, driving the Merc hardish, although it acquits itself respectably for such a big car, and the switchable suspension really helps, it's not a patch on this. This is incredible, but the problem is, who on earth would ever buy this? I mean, why would you buy it? If you want a big car like this to carry family and so on, you'll also want something which is bearable when you're driving normally, and this, to me, I mean, it's just about bearable, but it's not, it doesn't have much to recommend it if you're just trundling around, whereas the Merc is completely in its element. And certainly, you know, I could only think, okay, you can't buy any other car and you love sports cars, that would be the only reason why I think you would ever buy this. I can't think of any other reason. But who has £80,000 to spend on a car can't afford maybe 40 or 50,000 on a family car, and then another 30 or whatever, or a bit more actually nowadays if you're talking about it, on a proper sports car? The GTS makes absolutely 0 sense whatsoever. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to ask me any questions, Instagram is the best way. And goodbye from me and from the utterly schizophrenic Maserati Quattroporte GTS.